So, like I said previously, what happened was as I was going through the writing, I was having dreams with this particular person that had violated me in my teen years. They were becoming more vivid. And at one point, as I said, I had what is called a bodily flashback. And the signal before that started was the night before I had a dream, and the person in the dream was sitting right next to me. Prior to that, I never really dreamt with that person. It was like I had blocked out. I knew part of what had happened, but I didn't remember everything. I had blocked it out while it was occurring, and I had blocked out the bodily, the feelings, what I was supposed to be feeling when I was going through that. I had disassociated, so a lot of that was blocked in a separate compartment. To understand this, you have to look up what this disassociation is, how it works, and also complex trauma and how the body stores the memories of the trauma, but the mind stores it in a separate place. They're disconnected. So you may feel certain things when you're around that person, but you can't quite connect that it's the person because the mind up here, the memory, and the bodily sensations are separated. And that happens when it's occurring and the person is disassociating. What I had was bodily sensations, so I could sense what I was supposed to sense back then. I could sense the fear, I could sense horror, terror, and I could even smell the person. The senses were there. I could smell the person, but the person was not there in the room at all. And like I said, I looked at the picture, and the picture turned into that particular person's face. No, it was not demonic. The issue is that many times in churches, when it comes to healing, they want to either demonize everything or they want to undemonize things. There has to be a healthy balance. There has to be discernment. Some things, the enemy, because he knows the person may have triggers, the person may have flashbacks, the person may have anxiety. What they do is they aggravate it more, but it's not always a demon. And the error is that sometimes when people are processing in the church and they're crying or they may be screaming because they're actually, their body is feeling what it was supposed to feel then, and the thought is connecting with the body, and it's going to be released from the body, the trauma. What the ministers do is they start putting oil on the person, and then they go and touch them, which is a no-no, especially if it was rape or abuse, and trying to hold them down, and rebuking demons. That is not healthy at all for that soul. They need to be not touched. Like when I went through it, like I said, I'll go back. I basically took my purse. I could, at that point, I had this sense. At that point, I could smell the person. I felt that the person was in the room. I did not feel safe at all. I felt terror, horror, but I could think for myself, and I thank God. I began to pray, and I said, Lord, help me not to lose my sanity. But before I go to a hospital, I'm going to go to the church. I believe that was the Lord putting that in my heart. I went and I grabbed my purse slowly, and I went outside. I ran. The church was mainly like 3 blocks down. When I went, I opened the door. I handed the pastor a book that I have by, I believe it's Susan Bloom, and it's a book on incest, and it talks about the symptoms that incest survivors experience, and it also gives tips on healing and sources. It's a secular book. It's well known. It is helpful, and it is considered like a primary source. Lots of information in there and studies. And what I did was, because I could not open my mouth, I knew that if I opened my mouth, screams would come out, and I was in a church. So what I did was I gave her the book. The pastor took the book, and she knew. And she knew not to rebuke. She knew not to touch. And the people that were praying there, they knew to put their heads down, and they began to pray and pray for me, not rebuking. And what I did was I ran to the altar, I opened my mouth, and when I opened my mouth, everything that I was 40, but everything that teenage, what I was supposed to feel in those teen years when I was being abused, it was as if that teenage girl was there. She was there. That's all I can say. And it was not demonic possession. It was a part of me that I had blocked off. And it was the memory, the feeling, everything. The moment, it was as if I was taken back in time. And he was there, and I was there at 15. And what happened was that all that came out of my mouth were screams. People began to cry. The pastor began to cry and pray. She would kneel by me and pray. She would not touch my head, my shoulders, or any of that. And that's proper. You have to be very careful because the person is processing. You don't want to stop it. She did not call demons, rebuke, or any of that. She was able to discern by the Holy Spirit that what was happening was that I was processing and I was releasing the trauma from my body. And that the thought and the body were connecting. That piece I had stored away was connecting with my body, with my core self. Okay? Look up what the core self is. And I had splintered that off. And that part of me, the Lord was allowing me to fuse with the core self, and it was very painful. And once I processed, it took about maybe 20-25 minutes. They prayed me through. They let me get it all out. I felt what I was supposed to feel then. It was very painful. Once I finished processing, I remember they continued praying for me, and what happened was that I went home, and I was very tired, very tired. I needed to sleep. I called my counselor the next day because the Lord worked with both, the pastor and the counselor. And I told her what happened, and she asked me to come in. When I went into the office, she told me, "You are giving birth," meaning that I was processing and I was going to release that trauma from the body, and that memory was going to be connected with my core self, and I would remember everything. So I went in, and she wanted to make sure that everything was finished, that nothing else was left. And we began to talk about, she wanted me to go back and talk about certain things, and I did. And as I did, once again, the processing started. I can tell you I prayed before I went in there and asked the Lord that nothing that is not of Him would occur, and that He will continue the healing, that it will finish, and He did. And I sensed Him within me while this was being completed. I remembered other things. I cried, and it was a very impactful experience. And there was a change, and I sensed the Lord there within me and with her. And at the end of that, I remember that she, when we parted and I was no longer going to go to counseling, I think I went one more time or two, and I said goodbye. I remember her crying, and her telling me, I'm so glad that I met you, because what she saw in front of her was so impactful. Clearly the Lord was there. And so that is what I wanted to share today. That's one aspect of one of my healing experiences, which included a bodily flashback. Look up what a bodily flashback is. And how, when the child disassociates, how they store those memories and what those pieces become. That's the thing. For some people, they split. For some people, their bodily feelings that are just stored away from the immediate mind and the body. But the body has, as one professor told me, trauma is stored in the body, but you don't remember it in the mind. And the thing is to connect the two in order to heal. And the thing is, if the person is split, to join, and the Lord is able to do that. That is not difficult for Him. If somebody has split because the trauma is so severe, the Lord can take and He can mend those split parts into the core person. He knows exactly how to do it. But the thing is to make sure that when you do talk to someone, they have the experience and they're not going to start rebuking demons when there's no demons, and they're just going to hinder your healing. They'll stop it. Or they will add more trauma to the person, or shame. So it's very important to know who to go to. Ask the Lord in prayer for direction if you feel that you have to heal, that your trauma is stored in your body, or that you disassociated and maybe those thoughts splintered off somewhere, and there you haven't processed them, but you feel certain things in your body still, sensations around people or places. Or you feel that maybe you splintered off and emotionally you're not growing. Ask the Lord. Ask the Lord to guide you through the healing, to take you to the right person. And there are Christian counselors. Not all counseling is of the enemy. There are counselors that are Christian and the Lord will guide them. Or someone that's clergy, but you know they have experience in this area. So that's my third video. The next one, I'll think about another area that he healed me in, because he healed me in different areas in different ways. Thank you.